right, y'all catch on quick. No, but it is home to the French restaurant Cité. Now, Cité is French for overpriced. Now, the owner of Cité is not on the boat right now, right? Great, we're gonna have a great time. No, Cité is a great restaurant. I went there before. They have some great food, incredible views, but that restaurant itself does not spin around. Just some popular rumors to go along with Lake Point Tower there. But ahead, the boat is spinning around here, revealing my future favorite building out here in Chicago. Notice this building still under construction here. Bit of maintenance going on at the top, still have a little ways to go. This right here is Vista Towers. Now, Vista Towers is being designed by my favorite architect, Miss Jeannie Gang. Now, Miss Jeannie Gang's an incredible woman, ambitious woman, and right here at Vista Towers, she's about to accomplish two things. One, when that tower is all said and done, it's going to be just under 1,200 feet, making it the new third tallest skyscraper out here in Chicago. But more impressively, this will be the tallest building in the world designed by a woman. Right there at Vista Towers. Tallest structure in the world designed by a female architect, and it belongs right in our Living Museum of Architecture. Miss Jeannie Gang there, Chicago native architect. Now, as we continue to explore this Living Museum of Architecture, we're going to come across some record-breaking designs, trend-setting designs. Now, if you want to take in the views of Chicago, take Upper Wacker Drive and take your time. But if you're in more of a rush and just want to get to where you're going, go down below to Lower Wacker Drive. But if you are using GPS signal, do not go down below to Lower Wacker Drive. It will cut out, speaking to you from experience. Also, for my fans of the Dark Knight movie, halfway through the Dark Knight, the Joker hijacks an 18-wheeler. The Batman has to whip out the Batmobile, chase down the Joker. All of those scenes were filmed right there in Lower Wacker Drive. Multi-level highway, great place to film a Batman movie. Chicago, home to a lot of great films, and a lot of great TV, and a lot of great architecture. Like above the multi-level highway, we notice this perfectly triangle-shaped building here. This is our Swiss Hotel. Now, the Swiss Hotel, designed by a man named Harry Weiss, an architect who used to be a sailor, and he loves to place those nautical themes all throughout his structures and his designs. Perfect triangle shape to the building, just like the sails on the sailboat there. Now, behind the Swiss Hotel, designed by Mr. Harry Weiss, there's a building with some white fish fin style balconies. This is Aqua Tower. Aqua Tower is currently the third tallest building in the world, designed by a woman, also belonging to Miss Jeannie Gang. She took over third place there about 10 years ago before she shot up for first place. Aqua Tower and Vista Towers. Jeannie Gang buildings right along our river's edge, those record-breaking buildings. And once you capture that photo and take in that view, I want to draw your attention back over here towards Vista Towers, where you might notice this building bows in and out. You see Miss Jeannie Gang's a fan of water-like themes, aquatic-like themes, and she loves to place those features within her buildings. So right here, she's creating a bit of a giant ripple wave effect that's going to crash into the sky. They're going to finish decorating this building in that blue reflective glass all the way up to the top to help complete that ripple wave look for the structure itself. Now, different condos that are going to range anywhere from $1 million to $18.5 million. Yeah, I might be able to afford a closet in there. It's the Towers. We're still excited to have that building along the river with us here. Slate is open up in 2020 if all goes as planned. Now, Vista Towers will have an address on Wacker Drive. You see, below Vista, there's a multi-level highway here. This is our Wrigley building. Now, the Wrigley building, designed by Graham, Anderson, Prost, and White. You're going to hear those names a lot on the tour today. Graham, Anderson, Prost, and White. They're an incredible architectural firm from back in the day that gave us several buildings all along our river's edge. But this right here is the first of theirs we're going to encounter, and in my opinion, their finest. Now, that clock tower half of the building opened up back in 1921, while that latter half, connected by this little bridge in between, opened up back in 1923. Now, as you look at the building, especially as we get closer on it, I want you to really take in all of the decoration and ornamentation all throughout this building. Decoration and ornamentation all throughout the building is almost like we're looking at a giant wedding cake there. Our Wrigley building. Now the building itself is covered in 250,000 terracotta tiles. 250,000 terracotta tiles. Now terracotta, as you may know, is that very sensitive, oven-baked, porcelain-like material. So sensitive, in fact, that this building here has to be hand washed. Oh yes, we like to call this our diva on the river. You cannot pressure wash this diva. You will mess up her makeup. Hand wash only. 1,000 terracotta tiles that originally came in 6 shades of white. They got lighter towards the top of the building to really draw your attention to the overall height of the building. But over the decades, that white is kind of all blended together, but it still leaves us an incredible building. Our Wrigley building there. Now, on the other side of the Michigan Avenue Bridge, you're going to come across a style of architecture called contextualism. Now, when I say contextualism, be on the lookout for buildings with reflective glass that shows off the environment around them. Buildings that play well with their neighbors. Buildings with a very site-specific style of beauty to them. Now, a great example of contextualism can be located right here with our second tallest tower out here in Chicago, our Trump International Hotel and Tower, designed by Chicago native architect Adrian Smith back in 2009. That Adrian Smith giving us a great example of contextualism here, buildings that reflect their environment. I mean, you can even see the Wrigley building here reflected in the side of the tower itself. Contextualism. Also, this building has 3 patio setbacks to it. 3 patio setbacks that each align with the height of neighboring buildings. Windows on either side of the center clock tower. If you do, you might find an interesting fact about this building. Because you see on one side of the center clock tower, those bays of windows, columns of windows, what we have here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bays of windows on one side, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the other. 6 and 5. That building there is asymmetrical, and it wasn't designed that way by Mr. George C. Nimmons. But you see, back when they wanted to open up and widen the South Street here, a bit of this building was in the way. So the good old Chicago style fashion, they just lopped off a piece of it, left it up there asymmetrical. Chopping off a piece of that building to make room for the South Street. Very simple way to fix that problem. That's our Reed Murdoch building there. Now up ahead next to the Chicago Cut Steakhouse, there's a building with Chicago School labeled outside the front of it. Now the front side of this building is a great example of a fancy architectural term called tripartite facade. Now tripartite facade, fancy sounding word, easy to break down. Tri means 3, partite means part, facade means face. There are 3 parts to the face of this building. We have our base down below, our soaring vertical shaft in the middle, and then our capital on top. Tripartite. An example of this next style of architecture, feast your eyes on our merchandise mart here. Now the merchandise mart, also designed by Graham Anderson, Prost and White, those same people who gave us the Wrigley building, and now they're giving us the merchandise mart. But this time they're showing us a style of architecture called Art Deco. Now Art Deco came about during the Roaring 20s. With Art Deco, keep a lookout for your recessed ribbon windows and vertical racing stripes that draw your attention to the overall height of the building. Recessed ribbon windows, vertical racing stripes, and limestone cladding. 3 great signs of Art Deco, that Roaring 20s style of architecture there. Now we're going to see a lot of Art Deco all throughout the river. Keep a lookout for those 3 features. You'll always be able to spot it. For now, I'd like to welcome you to the Y-shaped intersection of the river. Welcome here to Wolf Point. And here at Wolf Point, you see a lot of contextualism all around us. A lot of buildings reflecting their environment, like our Nuveen building here. Nuveen building opened up back in the 80s, and notice how this building has a nice curve in its facade. That curve matches the curve and radius of the river we're on right now. Dark green colored tint to the glass, matching the dark green color of the river. Reflective glass showing off the environment around us. Nuveen building there. Great example of contextualism. And we're going to talk about this building with the Y-shaped base once we head down the South Branch. But for now, let's tune in to River Point. This building with the St. Louis style arch at the base. But if you look up at the top, you're going to notice the arch is inverted. Almost as if this building is reflecting itself. Nice curve in the facade of the building that matches the curve and radius of the river.
reflective glass showing off the environment around us. Now, I like this building because sometimes when people look at it, they begin to think, hey, this looks like a giant hot pocket. So after a while, I just started calling this a hot pocket on the river. Now, right next door to our lovely hot pocket, we have River Bend Condominiums. Yet another building with a curve in its facade, matching the curve and radius of the river. Architects really keeping that theme going here at Wolf Point. Curves in your building that match the curve and radius of the river. And how can we not notice this massive bridge in its upright position? This is our 1908 Carroll. Back when they used to have trains that ran through the middle of the city all the way out to Navy Pier and back, that bridge used to be highly operational during that time, but not so much today. But this bridge is a great example of how the bridges work out here in Chicago. Now, I said earlier that the bridges have counterweights embedded at the base of them. Usually that counterweight is hidden, but they left it exposed here with our 1908 bridge, with this yellow concrete block showing you just how much of a counterweight is needed to lift the bridges. Now, this bridge in particular is still operational. See, they let it down once a year. Drive a truck across it, collect some government funds by saying the bridge is still operational. That's Chicago for you. Land of geniuses or con artists, depending on what end of that deal you're on. Either way, that 1908 bridge not going anywhere anytime soon. Chicago landmark there. And these river cottages tucked into the corner here aren't going anywhere anytime soon either. River cottages with these circle-like portholes and windows along the side here. Triangle shapes across the roof, almost like sails on a sailboat. A lot of triangle shapes and nautical themes all throughout that structure. That's because the building was designed by Harry Weiss, the same guy who gave us the Swiss Hotel. The same architect used to be a sailor, obsessed with nautical themes. He's back once again, showing off his love for those nautical themes all throughout this structure here. River cottages, Harry Weiss. Now there's 4 unique cottages in there. They do not go on sale often, but back in 2015, one quickly sold for about $2.3 million. $2.3 million to get yourself a nice river cottage designed by Harry Weiss. Now you might even notice park benches out there facing towards the river. You see, this community itself is acknowledging the river. Hey, oh yes. Now you see, Chicago didn't always acknowledge the beauty of this river. So they dumped a lot of sewage and waste into the river back in the day. So it was okay for back then to just simply turn your back on the river. But nowadays, we're facing the river, cleaning up the river. Chicago is changing its relationship to this river and is transforming the city. And we're going to see plenty of examples of that all throughout the tour. Oldest on the river. And right next door we have River Bend Condominiums with these lovely balconies, pretty balconies, expensive balconies. Now back in the early 2000s, the residents would step out on those balconies and enjoy the downtown city view of Chicago. That is now the backside of Wolf Point Tower West. Brand new 50-story residential building opened up in 2017 and came along and took every inch of River Bend's view. We are very sorry for their loss. But all we can do now is just enjoy the view in their honor. Check out this view that River Bend lost. It's a great photo opportunity for you all of our city of Chicago off of the Wolf Point here. Enjoy this view. The Greeks, the Aztecs, the Egyptians, the Mayans. So on the other side of this bridge, if you look closely, you're going to notice some slightly creepy, but mostly cool Greek masks established across the backside of that building there. That Greek influence for the building. And if you look at that opera as a whole, you're going to notice it looks like a giant throne. That giant throne-like structure with that major setback to it. Now, surrounding spaces in the back of that throne are office spaces. Although international style, we're just softening up black box modernism a bit. We're sticking with some neutral themes, simple white concrete cladding. They say during the 70s, what you can do is take a building like this, place it anywhere in the country, and it fits in perfect. Those neutral designs of the 70s there. But as you can imagine, neutral got old pretty quick. So, in the 80s, Skidmore, Owens & Merrill gave the people Gateway Center 4, the final in this series here. Or alright. Now, Gateway Center 4 is my personal favorite in the series. We're looking at some contextualism once again. What we we'd be looking at is the site of Mrs. Catherine O'Leary's barn. Now, Miss Catherine O'Leary, sweet lady, she had a barn. Within that barn, she had a cow by the name of Daisy. Mrs. O'Leary loved her cow Daisy. And on that night, Mrs. O'Leary grabbed a lantern. She went into that barn to check on that cow, and that cow was okay. But Mrs. O'Leary left that lantern in there with that cow Daisy. Daisy accidentally kicked it over and started the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, right over there in that location. Now that fire blazed on for 20 minutes before firefighters showed up on the scene, which doesn't seem like a long amount of time. We've been on this boat for longer than 20 minutes. But back then, Chicago was going through a drought. 3 months of little to no rain in a city that was at the time mostly made out of wood. So as you can imagine, 20 minutes that fire blazed on and quickly got out of hand. Now once that fire reached this river, everybody had a sigh of relief. Fire meets river, river puts out fire. But no, the Chicago River turned its back on Chicago because Chicago turned its back on the river. Sewage, waste, lumber, debris, fats, and oils dumped recklessly into the river, so much so that the surface of this river caught fire itself. Also, and before we dive back into the beautiful architecture, let's revisit Mrs. O'Leary and that lovely cow Daisy, because they didn't actually start that fire. You see, that story I told you is the same story that newspapers told back in the day because they didn't know how the fire started. Now, don't get me wrong, there were a lot of facts within that story. For example, the fire did start over in that direction by Mrs. O'Leary's barn. Firefighters did take 20 minutes to show up on the scene because they were accidentally sent in the wrong direction. Surface of this river did catch fire itself, and the city did burn for 36 hours. All of that is very true. But how it all began in the first place, to this day, we do not know. But instead of admitting that they didn't know, newspapers just blamed Mrs. O'Leary and framed her innocent cow Daisy. Mrs. O'Leary and that cow faced a lot of hate back in the day. But it's quite all right, because the city of Chicago officially stepped up and exonerated Mrs. O'Leary. This is our carbon and carbide building. They're designed by the Burnham brothers. Now they took inspiration from the champagne bottle they designed that building. Green glass of the bottle, green base of that building, gold foil at the top of the bottle, 24 karat gold at the top of the building. Took inspiration from the champagne bottle, opened up the largest building in this country until the Pentagon came along and knocked it down a few pegs. Our merchandise. Brand management crucified. Right next door to the merchandise market, you see a building under construction here. Now, I mentioned earlier Wolf Point Tower West is a brand new 50-story residential building. Now, this is its sister building, Wolf Point Tower East, which is going to be a 60-story residential building. And then in between the two is going to be the third of the siblings, which will be a 60-story office building. 3-part building series coming to a little plot of land here. Took inspiration from the Rockefeller building over in New York when he designed this one. Now, NBC Tower opened up back in the 80s. It's a lot of great quality American television filmed in the building throughout the years. Quality American television like The Jerry Springer Show, Steve Loco Show, Judge Joe Mathis, Steve Harvey Show. Oh, the slices cut between it. Blue glass curtain wall, slices cut between it. This is 111 Wacker. Now, 111 Wacker, if you look closely at those slices, you might notice they're not just placed at random. Like their first slice about halfway up the building that matches the setback of the Sal Wacker. Or their second slice above it that matches the height of the Sal Wacker. Or that third slice all the way at the top that matches up with the base of the temple roof, the 77 Wacker next door. That 77 Wacker, truly beautiful building with that Greek temple-like structure at the top, white Portuguese granite racing down the side of the building. They live all together with each other, much like the royal family. The architects designed this next group of buildings in a way for them to really acknowledge their neighbors, going to try to point those ways out to you. Starting with our LaSalle Wacker building. Notice this building with the missing space in between. It gives the building a bit of an H shape. Set back to the building as well. Art Deco design all throughout. This is our LaSalle Wacker building. Now that missing space in between is what we call a light well. It allows sunlight to reach down to the streets below, making sure that building doesn't block out the sun all day long. All the sound by the building with that light well in between. Now on the other side is digital art on the back side of the merchandise part at night. Call it Art on the Mark. So projected digital art that covers the entire backside of this building from side to side, top to bottom. Incredible thing to enjoy here at night. And those giant green heads.
No, but what actually happened? Back in 2009, for those who don't know, the Willis Insurance Company, they're a great company.
They leased out 3 floors within that building. But they also got a couple of years worth of naming rights out of that deal. And with those naming rights, they decided to change the name of this iconic building from Sears Tower.
I'm not ready.